Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 38 of the Note Coach podcast, Expanding Your Capacity to Receive Money with Lynda James. So if you haven't caught the last couple of episodes, Lynda and I have been exploring societal conditioning, hindering women making money, and money archetypes, specifically the innocent archetype. But on the last episode, Lynda said something that was like, hang on, hold up. We're going to do a whole other episode on this. And it was expanding your capacity to receive money. So, Lynda, I'm going to butcher what you said and then you can tidy it up. You were talking about if we have imagine we had an auric field, like a field around us with our ability to receive money. And the example I gave is sometimes we try something and it actually works. Sometimes it doesn't, but that's a whole other story. But how many times have you seen a business do a boom? Like, oh my God, it's really amazing. Quickly followed by a bust. And that's where I was like, no, we do a whole episode about this. So I'll let you tidy up what I've just kind of thrown at you.
Sure. So, what I realized in doing this work when I started doing this emotional behavioral money coaching is that quite often we can go and shift one thing. It might be get the offer right, or increase the price. And then you chat to the person a couple of months later and they're still at the same place financially. And so I realized that we have this financial capacity. Some people call it a ceiling. There's a lot of terminology like money blocks, but they were insufficient around what was happening, particularly for women in business. We weren't just clearing a block that was stopping something. We actually have to assess this financial capacity that we have, which is like our internal world of money. You can change something on the outer. You can change the price, the offer, you can ask for the pay rise. But if you don't change how you are within, then you're going to come back usually to the same place.
Can I
So,
just interrupt you there for anyone listening?
yeah.
Because I've got an example. Because we're talking a little bit up here, some people that need it grounded. For me in business, when I started working with Lynda, we noticed that the amount of money I was bringing in was increasing. We'd be like, yay, but my profit margin was still not because I suddenly had more expenses. And I think you see a lot of this in the coaching industry. You start out with maybe a Zoom account and Acuity, and you've got quite low expenses, and then you join masterminds and get coaching. I'm not knocking any of these things, but often if you're not working on this capacity to receive that you speak about, Lynda, it's like, well, I'm making more money, but I've got more expenses. So the take home isn't changing. Is that what you're getting at here?
Yeah, exactly right. So, and it's exactly what they say with people who win the lotto and then 2 years later they don't have any of that money left. They haven't changed their capacity to receive money. So they get $2 million in or whatever, and then they blow it. We leak it out because we're actually, as a person, internally not okay with, am I a person that has that much money? Am I a person that gets paid more than I used to? No. So I'm going to usher it out as expenses and other things.
I
So
love
that's,
that. And I know working with you, and if this is your propriety stuff that only for paid people, you might be like, hush it up, Suzanne, and then people can follow you. But we once did an exercise in one of your programs that I did where you had to draw yourself. For everyone listening, me, it's a little stick figure. I'm not an artiste in any way, shape, or form. And then an amount of money that you felt comfortable and how close you could put it to your body, like your little stick figure. And to me, it sounds so bizarre and whatever. Like, oh, how hard can that be? But it was really eye-opening. And then because we did it in a group and shared, it was never to compare and despair or go, she's got it better than me or whatever. But what's fascinating is even within a group, what to someone else is a huge amount of money, to somebody else was like, oh, that's like chump change. But as I said, not to compare or not to she's right, you're wrong or whatever, but just, the conditioning, the family, the generation, the place that we live, like the location in the world, because your audience is global, makes such a big difference to something that seems so basic.
yeah. And so, part of that process is not only recognizing what is my financial capacity, where is it kind of sitting at, whether it be income wise or how much I'm even prepared to spend on myself. So some people might be able to bring money in to the business, but actually not really usher it through to themselves.
I'm raising my hand for anyone listening on the audio. I was like, yeah, I know that was
Yeah.
me.
So there are then things that we could then recognize that are either constricting that capacity. So we're living in a world where it's like, inflation, don't be greedy, be virtuous. Like all of these messages around us, as well as our beliefs and stories from our family and upbringing, they can be contracting or expansive. And so, when you look at these things, there can be certain experiences that are like a permanent kind of constriction that have to be looked at or dealt with. And then you can see people go, oh, right, I can take more money in now. I can take more pleasure in. I can take more rest in, more life in, because I've been able to deal with that thing. And so that's why when we were talking about the innocent archetype in the last episode, those feelings are indicators of what we can do to try and either move into a more expansive place or understand what is constricting us. And so it can be when we were brought up, we were constantly told, don't take, only take one lolly, when you're somewhere like at a birthday party. And it's like, only take one, don't have too much, and it's like, oh, that's a little constricting, isn't it? Like, don't ask for too much when you're pricing your work. So these things live within us, and that's what we are really, I guess, honing in on when we talk about financial capacity. And I think it's a more comprehensive or holistic view than just talking about money blocks or some of the common terminology that's used around
Also too,
behavior.
something you said to me once that's always stayed with me. It's like,
I'm like, oh my God, what is she gonna say? Do I need to
well,
be
if you don't
worried?
like it, we could just like not publish the episode. This is the advantage of it. But it was like I was talking to you about my money blocks, and you just
Yeah.
kind of stopped me deadpan. It was like, Suzanne, do you have money blocks or just a bad business model? And it was kind of like, yeah, because sometimes I think it's so easy to work on blocks and focus on where you're not and everything. And this whole premise of this episode on your work, expanding your capacity to receive, we think if we have a windfall, like I loved how you use the lotto example, because they've done a study and it's been over 90% of lotto winners are worse off 2 to 5 years later, worse off than they were before the windfall. It's like we think the money is the solution. But if, as you said, underlying it's something else, it's like if you go to the gym and you can't lift the dumbbells up at this other end, and how do you get to that end? You start at the lower end and lift the lower weights and do the repetitions and build the strength in your physical body. This is kind of like that, but for, I don't know, your auric body or your field or whatever, because more money doesn't solve it. As you said, if there's leaks in your sieve and you're just suddenly going to, find ways to get rid of it because unconsciously, subconsciously, you're not comfortable holding it. And then you think, oh, I just need to find some solution to my blocks and whatever. And it's like, is it really that? Or is it, in my case for the bad business model, or as you said, expanding that capacity, plugging those holes one by one, not looking for a magic solution that's going to, fix you.
Yeah, definitely. Otherwise, because quite often what we're looking at is symptoms, not cause. And so when we decide to just clear a block, that can just be band-aiding the problem rather than actually going to the original root cause of what's happening, right? Like, why do we have a constricted financial capacity? We're not just looking at, oh, I'm not very good at this thing, or I'm the problem. It's just generally me. I've got blocks or whatever. It's like, actually, what is the root cause of that? And I think when we get through to that, then it becomes a lot easier to understand what to do to move into like a place of expanding what's happening.
I love that. So for people who are listening, obviously follow you. I'll ask you for your website and everything shortly, because this is the work that you do. But if they're like, okay, I'm new to this whole idea and I just kind of want to sit with it on my own for a bit first, where would you recommend people start if they're realizing actually, the thought of having more kind of freaks me out? What could they do first?
I think you have to start with the smallest pieces of your life to see where you are actually allowing goodness or compliments or things in. So normally I say, how well do you take a compliment?
Oh, this old thing.
This old thing. When someone's like, you look great today. Yeah. People, when I sometimes have my hair out, it's quite big and curly. And people used to always say, oh, your hair looks nice today. And I used to go, yeah, I washed it. I didn't say thank you. I didn't think, oh, cool, that's good. I'm glad it looks, it looks nice and curly, whatever. I would respond, I washed it. If that isn't a prime example of pushing away a compliment, I don't know what is. Yeah. So I think you can start as small as compliments, right? Because what you're doing is retraining yourself to actually be able to receive, whether it's a compliment. And I used to do this with cups of tea, actually. Go to a friend's house. They're like, "Would you like a coffee?" "Oh, no, no, don't go out of your way for me. I'll just have like tap water out of just any glass." You know what I mean? And it's like, actually, I'd love a coffee. I'd love a hot coffee with a bit of milk, one sugar, whatever it might be. And we go, "Oh, no, no, I'll just have water." So it's like, can I actually receive the thing that's being offered to me in tiny places of life?
I
Can I
love
rest
that.
for 5 minutes? Can I have the coffee that I want? Can I take the compliment? Can I absorb feedback, good feedback from, it might be an employer or clients? And you can start as small as that, because all of those little things are slowly building out your ability to receive.
That
And
is
that will
so
then
true.
transpose into money.
And for anyone listening, often you might think, oh, nobody ever compliments me. It's
Mm.
because you haven't trained yourself. If you're not receiving them, you're literally deflecting them. You don't even hear them. So as you start to expand your capacity to receive and consciously receive, thank people for the compliment, you'll notice that you get so many more. And you'll be like, wow. And my invitation to you is to notice you probably had them all along, but because you were like, oh, this old thing, I got it on special, you shouldn't have, and you're just declining them everywhere, then you don't notice. And I loved the example of, of your hair out. Or funny, just before you and I jumped on to record, my husband's home from work today. He's not well. And I was about to hang out the washing. And he's like, well, I'll hang out the washing because I know you've got to work. And in the past, I've been like, no, no. And I was like, thank you. Yes. So
Mhm.
that gives me a bit longer to get on camera. Thank you very much. But just the little things, because the little things will make space for the big things.
Yeah, and it's teaching you to almost exercise that muscle, or even those neural pathways, right? Little train tracks, which is the way that we behave all the time. Our conscious behavior is what, 5%. So we're retraining ourselves to no longer push things away or not accept them, but to actually start always, it's like collecting positive, experiences and events and stuff rather than negative ones. It's like, yes, I got a compliment and I got to sit down longer and I didn't have to hang up that load of washing or whatever it might be.
I've got an
So,
episode on that called Collecting Evidence if people want to check that out. So,
mm,
because the more evidence you collect, and then when you have the moments of doubt or scarcity or fear, like our brains do that, brains are going to brain. Just taking yourself to sit down and look through that evidence to remind you, like, yeah, I'm freaking awesome.
yeah.
So, thank you for joining me, Lynda. How can people find you?
Yes, sure. You can head to my website at www.valofinancial.com. That's Valo, Valo financial.
I love it. Thank you. And thank you for joining us, everyone. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.